Welcome back to the BlackTrack, where I do commentary and review on movies with an all-black cast, or at least a black lead. Full disclosure, I've never really been into college basketball, and by extension, street ball for that matter. I mean, I did like the movie Blue Chips with Shaq and Penny Hardaway back in the day, but that was mostly because of the characters in that movie, not the basketball. And just like Blue Chips, Above the Rim is the type of film where what happens off the court is just as important as what happens on it. Above the Rim was directed by Jeff Pollack, the same man who directed Booty Call, but it was written by Barry Michael Cooper, who's best known for writing the screenplay for New Jack City, which I've already covered, and another movie which I'll be covering next. Collectively, the three movies he wrote are known as the Harlem Trilogy, because that's where each one takes place, and in some cases was actually filmed there. If you can't tell by the title, 1994's Above the Rim is a basketball story about a high school player named Kyle Lee Watson, played by Dwayne Martin. He has a real chance to go to Georgetown University and make something of himself, but it feels like everything keeps getting in its way, including himself. The story may seem a little basic and cliche with that description, and believe me, it is in some spots, but I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss it, especially with it featuring quite the cast of future stars like Leon, Marlon Wayans, Bernie Mac, Wood Harris in his first film, and the late Tupac Shakur. This time period was kind of a boom period for black basketball movies, but does this movie rise above the rim to dunk on the rest of the competition and claim superiority? Let's BlackTrack and find out. You can tell this takes place in the past. You know how? Duh, because humans could only see in black and white back in the day, until color was invented. And you know who invented color? Roy G. Biv, of course. Come on now, y'all went to school just like me. I know I said that Kyle Watson was essentially the main character, but an argument can be made that this is just as much Thomas Shepard's story also. Shepard, also called just Shep, is played by Leon. And do you know that until I started researching for this movie, I had no idea that Leon was the guy in the Madonna Like a Prayer video? I guess I either forgot, never noticed, or haven't watched this video in a while, but yep, this is how he got his start. In Above the Rim, he's depressing, but he has his reasons. Wouldn't you be miserable too if you watched your friend die after betting him that he can't touch the backboard higher than you? I have a few problems with this scene, and none of it has anything to do with what happened in it. For starters, who puts a basketball rack on top of a building with no barriers? And I know somebody in the comments is gonna say, yo son, where I come from, they dead ass have these on top of every building, kid. Secondly, and this is more on the technical side, but you can clearly tell that one part of it was filmed on a set with a barrier wall disguised as a building. But when Shep's friend falls, that gigantic wall is nowhere to be seen. It's minor nitpicking, but also further highlights how absolutely insane it is to have a basketball hoop on a roof, because who's going to get that ball when you miss? Not me. This naturally traumatizes Shep well into his adult life, but we don't have time to worry about that. We gotta get introduced to Kyle Watson, who's showtiming for the crowd at a local game, trying to impress a Georgetown University scout. Stop me if you've heard this one before. He's arrogant, cocky, a ball hog, and hot-tempered. Pretty much the prototype star basketball player in any sports movie you've ever seen. The story is that he was based partially on Allen Iverson, who supposedly displayed the same type of personality in college and who coincidentally played basketball at Georgetown University. Like I said, I've never really been into college basketball, so feel free to refute any of that if you're a big AI fan. As all of you know, I love talking about what if casting and trying to get you to imagine somebody else in a role made famous by somebody else. In Above the Rim, instead of seeing Dwayne Martin in the role of Kyle, I want you to imagine Alan Payne instead, because he was the first choice for the role. And while you're at it, go ahead and imagine Denzel Washington as Shep instead of Leon. That one I'm not too crazy about and can't really see it working in this film, but Denzel did go on to star in another basketball movie about 4 years later, so who knows? I guess I just can't see Denzel Washington playing the bitter individual that Shep ends up becoming. This man is no longer fun at parties. I would say it kind of fits that he's a security guard now, but his partner Monroe, aka Ray Ray, aka Bullhorn, seems to enjoy the job enough. It's always so interesting to me how actors can be in smaller movies like this and then also be in larger than life movies in the same year, because Byron Mims was in this and Forrest Gump within the same year. From Kyle's point of view, Above the Rim is about temptation. He's clearly the best player on the school team, but he's also not a team player and usually loses the game despite looking good on the court. Because of this, the recruiter is none too impressed. and doesn't really care for Kyle trying to flex his popularity for off-the-court points. That kind of uncertainty makes it easy for a kid like Kyle to be tempted by a street guy like Birdie, played by Tupac Shakur, who's kind of a renaissance criminal in this film. He does drugs, nightclubs, and even has his own street ball team. Once again, excuse my street basketball ignorance, but what kind of organization allows a drug dealer to be a part of it? Also, how does Birdie miss the perfect opportunity to name his team the 8 Ballers? That's not the only thing that's sketchy about the basketball tournament, but we'll get to all that later. Kyle's best friend Boogaloo is played by Marlon Wayans, and he sets him up with a meeting with Birdie. Kyle is super impressed with all the things Birdie offers him to play on his street ball team, but I'm not. None of this stuff is anything that Kyle can't get in college. Drugs? Check. Shady agents and lawyers? Check. Special privileges? Check. Money? Check. Women? Double check. Anybody who says otherwise is naive about what actually goes down at big colleges. But for the sake of the movie, let's say that the kind of things that Kyle can get from Birdie, he can't get anywhere else. Every time I see this movie, I'm torn between which story is actually better. Kyle's story is okay, but I've always felt like there's really no internal or external struggle until the very end. Sure, he's being tempted by the streets, but if we're being honest, he has the choice to do whatever he wants. He's just hard-headed, but there's nothing really holding him back. Shepard, on the other hand, has a much better conflict. Not only is he struggling internally, manifesting with him playing basketball with his imaginary dead friend, but he's also the brother of Birdie and has guilt about leaving his little brother to the streets. Then on top of that, the school coach is pressuring him to take over when he retires, but Shep can't shake the demons enough to help the next generation, which includes Kyle. There's a lot going on with Shepard, and I feel like the entire movie could have just been about him, and it would have been the exact same movie. Now at first, I was irrationally mad at Kyle's relationship with his mother, because it was somewhat unrealistic to me that she would just allow him to talk to her all kind of ways.
Your future does not depend on basketball.
See, that is the problem. You don't think that I'm good enough.
No, I know you're good enough. It's just
that nothing.
But then I realized that Above the Rim was doing something a little subtle and beneath the surface with it. See, eventually, Shep starts dating Kyle's mother, and when Kyle finds out about it, he has a baby boy level fit about it. That's because Kyle thought he was a stand-in for her having a man, and quickly finds out that he did not have the high ground.
Excuse me. What, you think you can just kiss me anytime you feel like it?
Anytime.
Excuse me? You think you can just kiss me anytime you feel like it?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's gotta burn. Mommy issues aside, I do like the dynamic between Kyle and Shepard and their reluctance to have a relationship with each other. Kyle needs a father figure bad, and Shepard needs to let go of the past and teach Kyle what he knows. But in typical fashion, they get off to a rocky start, where Shepard stops Kyle from bullying the local bum Flip, played by Bernie Mac. Flip might be homeless now, but it's revealed that he and Shepard knew each other because they used to play basketball together. I love the fact that Above the Rim puts a bunch of examples in front of Kyle's face of what can happen to him if he doesn't get his life together. He can end up a guilty introvert like Shep, a homeless bum with wasted potential like Flip, or a juvenile delinquent or drug dealer like his friend Boogaloo or Birdie. It doesn't spell it out for you, and it shouldn't have to, because it's better to do it visually like this. It makes it stand out more that Kyle is ignoring the destructive path that he's on. Hey, look what's playing at the theater. It must be Black History Month where they are. As usual, Tupac is great in this film, but I feel like he didn't get a lot of material to shine with. Most of his scenes consist of him being an annoying little mosquito to his brother Shepard. He keeps trying to convince him to join his criminal empire, which makes no sense to me, but it comes across more like him wanting to show his brother that he's better than him wanting to actually help Shepard. I don't have much evidence of this, but I feel like Tupac's role in this was drastically shortened because of his legal troubles. The filmmakers openly admit that they had trouble filming his scenes because of his legal trouble, so it makes sense that some of the things would be rewritten because of it. Which is a shame, because he's excellent here. This is the final film that would be released before Tupac was killed, even though 3 more movies would be released post-death. And you know what's crazy? When you look at his filmography, he really only starred in like 6 movies. His career feels so much longer for some reason. At some point, things seem to be going really good between Shepard and Kyle. That is until Kyle sees Shepard during one of his late-night imaginary friend pickup games. That makes him suspicious, not just because it looks crazy, but also because Shepard refuses to play ball with Kyle, and just like a scoring child, him's sad about it. You mean you'll play the air but you won't play me? That's bullshit. He goes to Flip to get details, but Flip isn't doing flips at the thought of providing information about Shepard. Gee, I wonder why. Kyle doesn't get much information out of him directly, but the presence of Birdie and his batshit insane henchman Motar, played by Wood Harris, loosens his lips a little bit.
Your fucking ass will come ask me about Tom Shepard. Ask Scarface, his motherfucking brother.
Birdie says a few pretty non-inflammatory things about his brother, but none of it was enough to cause Kyle to go into the full meltdown that he does during his next game at the mere sight of seeing Shepard near his mother. It's ridiculous, and once he's benched by his coach, he goes nuclear.
Hey, look, don't blame it on anybody else. You fucked it up yourself.
And fuck you!
And what is that gonna do?
Get this man a father and a hug, ASAP. Hell, Shepard was trying to be that, but just like the Boondock says, once a motherfucker throw a chair at you, it's nothing you can really do. He yells at him that he doesn't want him to see his moms anymore, and insinuates that it's dangerous to date him. Shepard doesn't even try to defend himself, highlighting his biggest character flaw, the fact that he runs at the first sign of adversity. That's actually a really clever scene, mimicking how real-life fathers walk out of their kids' lives when things get hard, instead of realizing that kids aren't easy and it's never a good idea to remove them from your life when things get difficult. Plus, how the hell you expect to keep a woman behaving like that? Kyle's mother needs a brave man, a strong man, a man like Denzel Washington. Kyle is starting to have second thoughts about playing on Birdie's questionable street team, especially after learning that Birdie and Motar went back and killed Flip anyway, for the experience points I guess. Learning this really doesn't give Kyle any kind of motivation. That comes from finally getting the chance to play Shepard one-on-one in a short but pretty impactful scene. Shepard tells him that all he has to do is score one time, which shouldn't be too hard for a star high school basketball player, right? But it's hard for Kyle to score a point with Thomas Shepard's foot in his ass. It plays out like when your little brother asks you if he could play you in 2K. It's a massacre. At least Kyle is a man about it and says he owes Shep, but Shep thinks otherwise.
You don't owe me nothing. You owe yourself and the ones that cared enough to get you here. Believe me.
That takes us to tournament day, where Kyle decides that he definitely no longer wants to play for Birdie in his gang. I give him props for delivering this news in person, because this could have easily ended badly for him. But lucky for him, Boogaloo gets most of the blame anyway, and is exiled from participating in the tournament. Boy, they definitely gave it the right name for something that I'm sure was organized with drug money. I still don't understand why Birdie wants to win this so much. It has to fall low on the list of things he can brag about. I also want to know what school administrators allowed a high school to participate in this. Forget the questionable funding. You better have damn good health insurance if you play in this tournament, because Birdie's team is gonna foul the out of you. These players are fighting for their lives. They don't even really get called on the fouls either, so I'm sure the referees are in Birdie's pocket too. Remember that old game Arch Rivals on the NES, where you could beat the hell out of the other team? Or am I dating myself? Anyway, that's what this is. This is the real life Arch Rivals. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Shep is about to do what he does best, until he sees an old newspaper clipping that points out his, well, I don't have to say it, it's right there in his face. I like this little scene because it's what Kyle's mom told him was his biggest issue, and it's been staring him right in his face all these years, but he's been so focused on the death of his friend to notice. Kyle's school team makes it to the finals, of course, and I knew Birdie wasn't going to go down without a fight that easily. That's probably a poor choice of words because his team has literally been fighting the whole tournament. But he tells Kyle that if he doesn't win, he's going to expose how he took gifts from him and ruined his college scholarship. Oh yeah, he got into Georgetown, and it's easy to miss because the movie treats it like it's not the most significant thing going on in Kyle's life. It's literally what the plot of the movie is built on, and all we get is a 10-second scene where the coach tells him, oh yeah, by the way, you got in. Now get back out there and get a concussion for this useless tournament. But as I said earlier, this movie really isn't about Kyle. It's about Shepard and his redemption. It's great how the movie builds up the legend of Thomas Shepard all throughout and makes you really want to see what he's all about. He arrives at the game and demands to be put in, much to Birdie's protest.
Hold up! What is this shit? He ain't on the team.
He's right there on my original roster. He ain't even in fucking uniform.
He damn sure isn't. He's in a long sleeve shirt and corduroy pants. So just know, if the announcer says he's on fire, he just might actually be on fire. He struggles at first, but that's only because he didn't know he was stepping into some WWE basketball. He even takes a back body drop. It doesn't take him long to find his rhythm though, once he starts fighting forearm with forearm. And before you know it, Birdie's team goes down, with Shepard literally and figuratively passing the torch/ball to Kyle for the win. Who would have thought that Birdie and Motar would be sore losers though? Clearly nobody at the game, because nobody scatters until Motar pulls out the blicky. However, Shep will be damned if he's going to be re-traumatized by such an event and takes one for the team, no pun intended, saving Kyle's life. Above the Rim then decides that the movie is long enough and fast tracks to the end without giving us enough time to dwell or even mourn about the events. Motar is taken out by a conveniently placed undercover cop, Birdie is shot to death by Boogaloo as a result of all the bullying, in a scene that was unnecessary to me. And then we get a time skip where we see that Shep survived and Kyle is in college playing for Georgetown, hitting a 3 in a callback scene when Shep told him how to improve his jumper. And that's pretty much it. But wait a minute, you know what I was thinking? A WWE style basketball league where fouls are legal might not be such a bad idea. I'd watch it. Call it the XBA. Above the Rim might have been on to something. Let's get to the grade. I'm of the belief that if you set out to make a sports movie and you spend the majority of the runtime on the actual sports, then you're setting yourself up for failure. For a movie like that to be a success, you have to have some kind of story and human emotion attached to it to get the audience emotionally invested in what happens on the court or on the field. I think Above the Rim does a great job at this. There's very little actual basketball in it, and I think that's for the better. If I could be a little cheesy, the movie does in fact rise above the rim and delivers a genuinely compelling story that isn't reliant on you having an intricate knowledge of the inner workings of high school and college sports, or the world of recruitment. The movie markets itself as a story about Kyle, but as I've already said, the actual interesting parts of it all revolve around Shepard and his journey to overcome his trauma. Despite doing quite a few movies before this, I think this was a career-defining role for Leon that convinced anybody who was on the fence about whether he could carry himself in a movie like this to believe in his abilities. There isn't really any bad performances in it, although an argument can be made that there are some underdeveloped characters. Like, I wouldn't have been mad if we got a little more backstory on Boogaloo, Motar, and especially Birdie, because we never even really learned how he got that scar, and even though you can say it adds mystique to his character, it would have been nice to include some details about his rise to power. All that aside, Above the Rim is an entertaining watch, even if it didn't really break new ground or reinvent the wheel. Of all the black basketball movies that released during this time, I would say it's one of the best, if not the best. Also, the soundtrack is one of the best soundtracks ever released, and is responsible for hits like Regulate by Warren G and Afro Puffs by the Lady of Rage. So whether you're a sports fan or not, give Above the Rim a shot. My grade for Above the Rim is a B. It's not the best movie in the Harlem trilogy, but it holds its own against the other two. And that's it for this episode of the BlackTrack. As usual, let me know what you thought about the movie Above the Rim in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, I'll holler at you.